Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on another session of WEConnect Academy Learning from Women Leaders Around the World series. My name is Andrea, and today I'm very happy to introduce Jean Chawapiwa. He has extensive experience in external affairs, communication, and media in the mining sector, which included work on several divestments and acquisitions. Her portfolio for many years included the Communities in Africa strategy. He's passionate about helping entrepreneurs and mentoring women and young professionals play a growing role in Africa's development. As part of this, she continues to sit on the board of Junior Achievement Africa. He was the first woman on the South African Chamber of Mines Executive Council for over 6 years. He chaired the Chamber of Mines Communications Committee and sat on the board of Rio County Management Services and American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. He studied business studies, marketing, and journalism. He participated in several leadership development programs during her career and while working at British Telecom, the CSIR, Dell Gold, and Rio Tinto. He is the CEO of Win-Win Solutions for Africa, which is a company that provides business facilitation services to a wide range of clients from different industries. Today, she's going to talk about how the world continues to report Africa as a place of poverty, corruption, and violence. Little is said about the growth of many of the countries, the innovation and the opportunities. In every country, there is many opportunities for trade and having private sector and public sector investments. So now I'll let introduce Jean herself, but I would like to remind all the attendees that you are muted, and if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat or Q&A boxes.
Hi.
I'll read them out loud at the end of the webinar. This is a one-chance opportunity to learn as much as possible, so we encourage you to do as many questions as possible. Thank you, Jean. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope people can hear me better than I could hear you. It was kind of cutting in and out. So can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Well, good day to the people who dialed in. Thank you for making the time. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm really delighted to be here at this webinar today. Thank you to WeConnect for allowing me the opportunity. I really appreciate it. So my title is Africa is Open for Business, and it really is open for business. I'm assuming I'm speaking to business owners, and I want you to know that this is a market that you need to take seriously to grow your business. I hope the information that I share with you will make you think to a higher level of positivity about this amazing and magical continent. I wanted to do this webinar for a number of reasons. Firstly, I'm an African, living in Africa, born in Zimbabwe, raised and educated in the UK, then married a South African and was reintroduced back into the opportunities of the continent. For 23 years, I've been living in South Africa and working on the continent. I visited 19 of the 54 countries many times with work and conferences. I still have a lot of traveling to do to really see more of this continent. I speak from a somewhat informed space. As the introduction said, and articulated, my business works in Africa with clients in several countries and an advisory to many others looking at investment opportunities on this continent. I've also worked with corporates who've been investing heavily on the continent. I'm happy to take questions at the end, as was said, and will communicate with anyone after the presentation. My contact details are on the final slide. Thank you for taking the time to listen in. I'll go straight into the presentation. So, as the first slide says, we want to talk about the size of Africa. Apologies for that. So Africa, as I've said, is a continent of 54 countries. So we often say Africa, Africa, but it's actually a very complex place. It's reported that there are 1,500 to 2,000 spoken languages. It's the second largest by geographic area and the second most populous continent in the world, with an area of approximately 30 million kilometers squared and a population of 1.2 billion. That's 1.2 billion people. It's a huge place. And we're told that the combined spend of that population will grow to $6.7 trillion. As you can see on the map there, you can fit several countries into the size of Africa. You can see there it's got the United States, parts of Europe, India, all can fit into this massive scale. So it is big. Africa is vast. At a time when many global economies are floundering or experiencing political or economic turmoil, parts of Africa have demonstrated robust economic growth. African companies and people are in their varied ways making an impact in the global marketplace. The continent continues to attract wide-ranging internal and external investors who are confidently embracing an economically diverse future. The continent is also home to some of the world's fastest growing economies. In 2016, EY in their Africa Attractiveness Index ranked the continent second out of 10 regions globally in terms of foreign direct investment attractiveness. Africa is also where human development levels have grown most rapidly. Out of 20 countries recording the highest rises in the Human Development Index since 2000, 14 are in Africa. This is also reflected in the significant progress many African countries have made towards achieving their Millennium Development Goals and their targets. I know some of you will be saying it's because a lot of the countries are coming from a very low base. Yes, that's true. Nonetheless, this growth is fueling economic growth and innovation and catching the attention of the world. The region is more interconnected globally than before through trade, investment, migration, telecommunications, and information communication technologies. The vast African continent is split into several economic regions, each with its own peculiarities, charms, and opportunities. The economic blocs are working on improvements in trade, developing free trade areas, improving customs, and some are looking at implementing a freedom of movement protocol, and some looking at monetary union. Just have to take a sip of water. There have also been shifts in political and economic developments. In some region, that offers a range of new business opportunities. As I said in the introduction, Africa is a continent of many variations. This includes economic growth. Some countries on the continent, including South Africa, continue to struggle to grow their economy at a sustainable rate, with South Africa having been the favorite investment decades for many decades. Although still way ahead of many development indices, this lack of sustainable growth in South Africa has given other markets an opportunity. Much of the growth in a number of the continent's countries has been driven by the continued discovery of minerals, helped by the discoveries of oil and gas, further aided by the continued growth in agriculture and the new growth in technology hubs. Sub-Saharan Africa, SADC, that you can see on the diagram, has grown at over 5% for the last decades, with 6 of the 10 fastest growing countries globally located in the region. 5 years ago, only 3 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa had economies valued at $100 billion US. By 2020, that number will double, showing continued growth of this continent. West African Economic and Monetary Union, led by Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal, are among non-resource intensive countries. Activity in 2019 to 2020 is expected to be solid, supported by infrastructure investments. Growth prospects have improved in most of East Africa, owing to improved agriculture and discoveries of oil and gas. Ethiopia continues to grow, surprising many. Growth will remain the highest in the region, and government-led infrastructure investment continues. Ethiopia this year announced a cabinet with 50% of positions being held by women. Progress indeed. Since 2000, at least half of the world's fastest growing economies have been in Africa. As we go through the slides, you'll start to see a pattern of the countries that come up often. In this slide, some of the fastest growing economies in 2018 we can see are Ghana, Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire, Djibouti, Senegal, and Tanzania on this list of the global largest growing. Africa comes up frequently. Growing economies plus natural resources plus growing consumer markets spell Africa business opportunities. The next slide is an interesting one. It's an investment house's top 10 countries and their bottom 10 countries on the continent. So it's interesting again to see Morocco, Botswana, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Senegal. Some countries we become to know that are growing and are good investment destinations. And then we can also see the countries that are seen as not growing for many reasons, some due to conflict areas. But let's remember that business opportunities are everywhere. Even countries at war trade. I spent time in Conakry in Guinea, one of the poorest countries I've ever visited. The hotels, restaurants, and business supplies were available. I could still have my hair done, have my nails polished, and buy expensive handbags. Many nationalities like the Lebanese, Chinese, and Indians are good at finding business opportunities. For those doing business with multinational companies, we took, for the sake of this presentation, some of the WEConnect International corporate members we're working with in South Africa and listed where their offices are on the continent. There are for some opportunities to move into those markets with the corporates, but it also tells us where these highly informed companies feel there are great opportunities on the continent. Starting with Accenture, they have offices in Angola, Egypt, Mauritius, Morocco, Nigeria, and 2 in South Africa in Cape Town and Johannesburg. Cisco, who's in innovation and all things, have more offices on the continent, including Algeria, Egypt, Ethiopia. Kenya comes up again, Mauritius, a popular one, Morocco, a popular one, Nigeria, where there's a lot of innovation happening. Senegal comes up again, and then 2 offices again in South Africa. Dell, Morocco, and South Africa. ExxonMobil, I know, has new offices now in Mozambique as they start to take advantage of the new finds in East Africa for oil and gas. They also have offices in Cape Town and Equatorial Guinea and Lagos and Nigeria. EY was a great find because they actually have 2 slides of offices, which include, again, Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Mozambique, Algeria. And the next slide's Namibia. I was actually recently in Windhoek and parked next to the EY office. Abuja, Senegal comes up again. Of course, Durban, Cape Town, and Johannesburg, Tanzania, and an office in Zimbabwe and Zambia. GSK, fewer offices, which include Morocco, South Africa, Tunisia, as well as Kenya. Hilton, taking advantage of the need for hotel rooms. And a lot of business people want to make sure that they go to a popular brand, somebody they know. So Hilton is spreading their wings and have been in a number of African countries for a while. Later on, we'll look at another hotel brand that's really spreading heavily onto the continent. IBM, again, quite a few offices on the continent, which includes Kenya, Morocco, Ghana, South Africa, obviously, Tanzania, Brazzaville, and Lagos. Intel having a lesser visibility, a small office in Johannesburg and visibility in Cairo in Egypt. And Ingersoll ran a very large presence in Johannesburg. Johnson & Johnson, having recently opened an office in Kenya, are in Ghana as well as South Africa. We work closely with Johnson & Johnson. He's the chair of our advisory council. Marriott has been spreading its wings across the continent, buying pro-tier hotels and really increasing the number of beds that they have across the continent. They're showing a very positive stride in believing in the continent and its growth and wanting to make sure that it's there and highly visible. They've got Maputo, beautiful hotel in Maputo, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Rwanda, Morocco, Mali, as well as Algeria. And then the last of the slides are included in this batch. I thought I would include the World Bank. The World Bank joined WEConnect recently and have a large number of offices across the continent, supporting women-owned businesses quite heavily. They're a good partner to actually work with to see what they're doing in those other countries, and then be able to move into new sectors and new markets with them. So moving on to the sectors providing the investment opportunities across Africa. We put in a slide that says, what's generating most of the value. So we're not surprised that food and beverages is in there. By 2030, the sectors generating the most value in Africa will include education, transportation, housing. Also be strong growth in consumer goods, hospitality and recreation, and healthcare, as well as financial services and telecommunications. Business-to-business spending has always been big, and it's good to watch that, especially if you're in business yourself. Business-to-business is a great opportunity for growing into the markets. So we're told that by 2020, there'll be lots of business-to-business spending that will reach $4.2 trillion. Here, the largest sectors will include agriculture and agricultural processing at $915 billion. Manufacturing, which is good news for Africa. We need a lot more manufacturing. Construction, utilities, and transportation. Wholesale retail. Resources continue to show the strong showing across Africa. Banking and insurance, telecommunications, and ICT. All of these opportunities are in trillion and billion dollars. These are large opportunities for those who make strategic moves and invest sustainably. Africa as a continent has, through the African Union, made strides to improve intra-regional trade, seeing this as a big opportunity for growth and self-development. The African Continental Trade Area is the result of a trade agreement among 55 members of the African Union. The agreement will result in the largest free trade area in terms of participating countries since the formation of the World Trade Organization. African heads of state gathered in Rwanda in March 2018, and 49 of the 55 members signed this amazing agreement. The agreement requires that members remove tariffs from 90% of goods, allowing free access to commodities, goods, and services across the continent. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa estimates that the agreement will boost intra-Africa trade by 52% by 2022. Intra-Africa trades opens huge opportunities for African businesses. This will hopefully be followed by free movement of people, as visas and air transport routing are still a big problem. It's still often cheaper and easier to fly to Europe than within the continent, something that Ethiopian Airways is hoping to change. They've made significant improvements and have become an amazing airline, showing again leadership from Ethiopia. Africa has many global investors. China is mentioned today due to the impact it's making in infrastructure development. It's also a relatively new and developing relationship. China and Africa have been partnering on investments with significant increases in the last 7 years. In September of 2018, delegates from both countries met at the 7th Annual Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. The collaboration and cooperation makes Africa one of China's greatest allies in the current global market environment. During 2018, China announced it would be providing $60 billion in financial support to Africa. Some of the primary motivations that lie behind China's push towards increased investment in Africa includes, obviously, the desire to secure a solid base of raw materials to fuel China's own rapidly growing economy, the desire to increase China's global political influence, and the major growth opportunities presented by emerging market economies in Africa. China can see that Africa is growing and has huge potential, not only as a market with a large population, but also as a place where they can get mineral resources and they can get food and resources to feed their people. Some of the big infrastructures investments have included, and you can see from the pictures there, Kenya's largest infrastructure project since independence, the Mombasa to Nairobi Railway. In Ethiopia, China has funded 2 railway projects. Railways were also funded by China in Angola and in Nigeria. As you can see, big investments that are going on. In 2017, Angola signed a deal with China for the construction of the hydropower project in Dondo, Angola. The project is set to produce 2,172 megawatts of electricity and will take about 7 years to complete. Electricity is widely needed across the continent, as we'll talk about when we talk about energy later on. A similar project is going on at the Caleta hydroelectric facility in Guinea, 75% funded by China. In Nigeria, China signed a deal to build a refinery in Edo State. Again, the investments continue and are varied. A Shanghai-listed developer, China Fortune Land Development, is set to invest and build an upmarket residential district, an industrial zone, schools, a university, and recreational centers in a new city in Egypt. So it's amazing investments that China's making. A lot of people say this is win-win investments because Africa greatly needed the infrastructure to be able to grow, to be able to move products to market. Ports are also being developed to support the investment. The African Development Bank is making widespread investments into infrastructure, as well as each of the economic regions within Africa, also making big investments in infrastructure. Infrastructure will make a big difference in the development of the continent. So some people criticize the investment from China, but a lot of us applaud it. And it's up to our governments to make sure that the people of the continent really get the best of this investment. So going back to some of the sectors that are driving growth, we'll go to agriculture now. The World Bank forecasts Africa's agriculture business to be worth 1 trillion by 2030. 60% of the world's uncultivated land is in Africa. 60% of the world's uncultivated land. And the agro-processing sector, to set it up, is in Africa, and the agro-processing sector is set to take over mining and metals. Excuse me, I just need to take another sip of the glass of water. This is coupled by the fact that technology has revolutionized the industrial agriculture industry in Africa, which has enabled the few market players to produce on a massive scale at reduced cost. So again, technology is making a big impact in the development of the continent. Investors often consider Uganda's agricultural potential to be the best on the continent, with 2 rainy seasons per year and the temperature almost always constant. Uganda benefits from multi-crop harvests per year. Extremely fertile agricultural land of Uganda can feed 200 million people. And they produce a wide range of agricultural products. And those include coffee, tea, sugar, edible oils, cotton, tobacco, plantains, corn, beans, cassava, sweet potatoes, sorghum, groundnuts, amongst the wide products that Uganda produces. The world needs food, so again, more and more business opportunities to those who can work with the agriculture sector. So that means the sale of machinery, market research, opportunities to actually buy the produce and take them to market, huge scale opportunities in agriculture on this continent. There are lots of small scale opportunities in agriculture. I know several groups that are actually making sure that they really get going on the agriculture front, taking advantage of the investment that's coming not only from the banks, but also from other institutions that really want to increase the agriculture on the continent. Each of our countries on the continent need for us to increase agriculture, so we import less and actually export more. It's a great opportunity, and people are delighted when we're posting pictures of Zimbabwe apples in Tesco in London. We need to get more and more of the African products out there. Roses from Kenya going around the world. We have a huge opportunity in agriculture. Moving on to power and renewable energy. Opportunities again exist. Many investors are testing green energy models on the continent. With the abundance of sun and wind, there's a lot that Africa can do around renewable energy. The demand for energy on the continent has for decades far exceeded the supply. So again, big opportunities there on the continent. Moving on to another one, transportation. The African Development Bank had reported that from 1950 to today, urban residents have increased from 14% to 40%. African cities are growing fast. This number is set to reach 50% by mid-2020. Transportation in its many forms is a big business opportunity. And then going back to investments that we talked about earlier on transportation in trains and road, this really is helping to mobilize the people of Africa so they can take advantage of the opportunities that are arising on the continent. Uber arrived on the continent. Fast-thinking investors and workers are growing their income by putting cars at the disposal of urban commuters. Uber was very welcomed in many countries across the continent, currently operating 16 African cities and 9 countries, which include South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Tanzania, Uganda, Ghana, Egypt, and Morocco, as well as Mauritius. Uber is really taking off. And they're actually finding new competition with new apps coming online that do exactly what Uber does, but are competing with Uber on price, as well as trying to have more cars on the road. So a great opportunity in an innovation. Innovations are many on the continent, and I wish I had time to talk more about more of them. Innovations bring solutions to problems faced by the people of Africa, solutions that need to be made in Africa for Africans. I had the opportunity to go to an award evening this week at the African Leadership Academy. Young people under 25 showing their innovative ideas. The winner got $25,000 award. And I was amazed again by the youth of this continent and the innovative ideas they're bringing forward from the problems that they see on the continent. Really great innovative ideas. As the introduction said, I sit on the board of Junior Achievement Africa, where I've been very fortunate to travel around the continent and see youth who participate on Junior Achievement, coming up with amazing innovative ideas, from food ideas to products and services. They really are seeing what they need in their neighborhoods and coming up with innovative ideas, and a lot more can be done to help them. Moving on from transportation, education. Education is so crucial for the continued growth of the continent. As one of the fastest growing populations with a large youth dividend, the demand for quality education is booming, and most African governments are struggling to meet the growing demand. Private business sector is booming as a support. This is from nurseries to high school, universities, professional education, as well as vocational training. Education is big on the market. You can see that the Henleys, the big brands, are also coming into the market. Harvard and many other brands are available now on the continent, and understanding that there's a big market and opportunity in education for them to actually participate in. So as I said, there are a lot of young entrepreneurs on the market. I took an article which just showed 10 young African tech entrepreneurs. And again, we can see how the girls are starting to come forward. I don't have time to go into what each of them are doing, but I liked the fact that they were really from different countries: South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, coming up with innovative ideas. And of course, the young men are also not being left behind. Really great, innovative idea. A lot of them technologically based. They're seeing a problem that the continent has and coming up with great, innovative ideas. So it's not just the youth that are being innovative. We know that women make up, in most countries, 51% of the population. I'm very fortunate to be working with WEConnect International in South Africa, and I've met amazing women entrepreneurs who come up with amazing, innovative ideas, running strong businesses in multi-sectors, including manufacturing, services, language translations, logistics, travel agents, providing coffees and flowers to the large corporates, engineering, women in technology, as well as farming and pharmaceutical and construction, and many more. I really believe that women and youth provide a great market entry into the African countries, whether your business is actually sitting in Africa and looking for markets in other African countries, or you're sitting outside the continent and looking for a smart way to come on the continent. Look at organizations like WEConnect and how you can connect with their women entrepreneurs that are registered and certified with them. There are also many other women's associations that are doing extremely well, and we're now starting to work together, collaborate, and make sure that we really amplify the work of women business owners across the continent. There's a lot that can be said about the successes of the women business owners in the networks that we're actually working in. They're doing amazing things. So we've talked about young techs, we've talked about women, we've talked about the opportunities in different sectors. I hope I've painted a picture of the opportunities that really say Africa really is open for business. There's a lot more that we could have covered in this presentation, but I was actually worried about running out of time. So besides the young tech entrepreneurs, there's lots of global tech companies that are also investing heavily on the continent. And these include Google, Facebook, Orange Telecom, Microsoft, Liquid Telecom, Saficon. We are now having big we're now having African brands growing global and providing services in other countries. So really growing our own brands upon this continent. Very proud of that. So I wanted to end on the slide that talks to, so how do you succeed? A lot of people hear a lot of negative things. Even if they're living on the continent, we often hear negative things about other countries. Africans are often the slowest to move to new opportunities on the continent, yet other people have the courage to go and look at the opportunities and jump in there. And there's many stories of that. And I guess a lot of that is that we don't understand our own continent. And we need to move around a lot more with the continent. The infrastructure almost guides us to go and visit other continents before we visit our own continent. I know many people who've traveled to the States and all over the world, but have seen very, very little of our continent. So as somebody who's actually traveled a lot on the continent, I advise you, go out there, visit. There's amazing cities. Senegal is beautiful. Maputo, Mozambique, not just for holidays, but actually go and see the opportunities yourself. There's really nothing like being on the streets, meeting the people, going to the coffee bars, understanding a little bit about the drivers of the economic growth, seeing it for yourself with your own eyes. I urge you to actually come to Africa and visit. And if you're sitting in Africa already, go and visit other countries. So what does it take to be successful? I think a big part of it is about the mindset. It's about a mindset of going in, looking for success, but making sure that the partnership is a win-win success. Not just take and leave, but looking at what the continent needs and long-term investments. So mindset is crucial. Also about training the people of the continent, making sure that they have fair salaries, good training, and are looked after. The other one is to not think of language as a barrier. I hear people often asking me, how come you work in Mozambique and you don't speak Portuguese? I don't see language as a barrier. There's many ways of communicating. And sometimes we use translators when we need to, but you find the language of business is often English or French in a lot of the African countries. And in Mozambique, there's always people that we do business with. If I need to go and see a minister or member of government and I need a translator, translators are easily available to get. So language is not a barrier. In a lot of opportunities, it's actually an opportunity. And it actually enriches your life. So we've talked about the fact that it is a vast continent. People really need to understand there's a difference between East and West and South and North. And it just takes someone to understand, ask the questions, meet the right people, go to events, network, and really understand what the drivers are of those countries. Often we'll also be told that, you can't go to certain countries because it's violent. And yet they'll be talking about violence in Cape Town when you're actually visiting Johannesburg. The continent is vast. And I always say violence and crime is everywhere in the world. You just need to understand where you're going and what you need to do and do your research before you actually go along there. One of my favorite ones when I'm talking to people about Africa is please don't pay bribes. Because I always believe it comes back to bite you at a later stage. Don't pay bribes. If it looks like the business is not going to happen because you have to pay a bribe, walk away wherever you can. Really walk away. I think we create the opportunities for people to take bribes, but I always say there's two sides to the crime. There's those that give the bribe and those that take it. Both are just as guilty as each other. The other one, as we talked about earlier, find win-win sustainable investing, where you're helping other people and really making a difference. I think those are the best types of investments that we really want to look for. And we want the kind of investors that are looking at how they can help the continent too and help the people and respect the people. And then, like I said, do your research. And one of the best ways to enter any market is to partner with local experts. There are a lot of local experts that you can actually speak to on the continent and partner with them. There's a lot of nuances in a country that often we think we understand, but it's only in the day-to-day activity that we really understand what's going on. So having partners who are local and who understand the culture, the languages, and the nuances of the place is really important in order to be successful. I think that was actually my last slide. The last slide is about the communication. So I'm available on my email, jschawapiwa@solutionsforafrica.com. I'm on Twitter at JSChawapiwa. And thank you very much for taking the time to dial in. I appreciate the opportunities very much. I know we wanted to take questions, so I'm happy to take questions. I'm delighted that I finished within long before the time was up, which is great. So Andrea, I'm not sure if you're there with any questions. I can't yet see any questions being typed.
Yeah, we do. Thank you so much, Jean. That really made me want to go to Africa. I swear, I need to go very soon. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. So we have a comment from Michelle.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Jean. Excellent information. Thank you for joining, Michelle. I would encourage everybody else to do questions for now. Can you, Jean, explain a little bit more about how, companies, in other places in the world would be, if they are interested in doing business with you, what would be the best way to reach you? Would it be through your email?
Yeah, I think the first contact is obviously through email, which is great. And then we can make connection either through Skype, Zoom, webinars, whatever. I'm available to make contact. So yeah, or through Twitter. Happy to make contact with people on this subject. I'm very passionate about the subject of Africa. There's so much more information we could have gone through, but I think that's really for us to then discuss with people that want to see opportunities and can say, talk to me about agriculture, talk to me about transport and where the opportunities are. We're speaking to a number of our clients about opportunities in manufacturing because many governments really want to get manufacturing off the ground. So if you run a business somewhere else and you're doing manufacturing and want to see where the opportunities could be or to find partners on the continent, happy to engage and have the conversation around that. But there are really amazing opportunities out there on the continent. And I would really like more women, more youth, more people to actually engage with them and not just leave it to the large corporations to go in and take advantage of the opportunities. I think there's a lot of opportunities for all of us to look at profitable investments across the continent. A lot of people come to the continent and they never want to leave. I've got friends from Germany, from Canada, from all over the place who come. Sometimes they come with jobs with embassies. They work 3 to 5 years and then they decide, actually, I don't want to leave. It's an amazing opportunity and we look forward to welcoming everybody. And the African people are very welcoming, very, very welcoming.
I'm sure. So we have a comment from Diana. I'm struggling to get into manufacturing because of the upfront capital cost. Do you have any comments about that, Jean?
Yeah, so I say, depending on what you're going to do, there can be very large upfront capital costs, which is why I suggest that you find partners to be able to share the costs. Depending on what you're doing and what your capital costs are going to be, there are institutions that are looking to invest in different businesses. So I think that the opportunities are out there to get other investors to come in and join you. And also finding established businesses who want to invest. I've got a client at the moment that we're working with, and she wants to find other established business owners that she can go 50-50 with on the capital outlays of the business. And there are people out there that are looking for partners to come in and help. So lots of opportunities to look for them.
Perfect. I don't know if there's any other questions. I just want to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded. So we will be sharing, well, you will receive a notification from the webinar that will allow you to access the video, but we also upload our videos in our WEConnect Academy YouTube channel. So you are more than welcome to visit our YouTube WEConnect Academy channel so that you can find not only this recording, but many other recordings of webinars that we've done in the past. Diana says that great, I'll reach out on partnerships. Thank you, Diana.
Great. Yeah,
yes.
I'll look forward to hearing from Diana. That's great.
Yeah, she's saying that she hopes to see for many more similar webinars. Yes, for sure. We will be opening our applications to do webinars. If any of you are interested, we will be sending an email blast very soon with the application for you to run a webinar next year. So please stay tuned to our website and our YouTube channel and also our emails from the WEConnect Academy so that you can follow what is happening at the WEConnect Academy. So I don't think there's any other question. I don't know if you would like to leave any last comments.
No, I don't really have any other comments other than to really say thank you and, repeat the topic. Africa is open for business. So, and I completely agree. It's investing, especially in places that are far away, depending from where people are, it can be scary. But there are organizations that can help to take some of that scariness away. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate the time that people take to call, especially on a Friday afternoon. Thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate it.
Of course, Jean. Thank you so much for doing this amazing webinar. It really made me want to go to Africa very soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And please stay posted for the recording. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.